Yes, I have a simple question. It's how the angels, when the Bible says in Numbers 22, verse 23, that an angel has a sword. If you read that, you can find out. But my question is how an angel can have a sword and convert it like to a weapon to execute anything that he needs to do.
Well, that's a really good question. So how does an angel use a sword, and what does it mean? Is it actual sword? Is it like, that he's unsheathing? What does it mean? The first thing that comes to mind, and I'm going to hang this over to my colleague, but one thing that comes to mind, Juan, I think of when Jesus comes back and it says a sharp sword proceeds out of his mouth, and with it he strikes the nations. Then we know that angelic beings do have power. When Jesus was there in the Garden of Gethsemane and the disciples sought to defend him, he told them to put away their swords, saying, "Don't you know how many angels I could call down right now and wipe all of these people out?" And you see throughout the Old Testament, one angel could do serious damage. Imagine thousands upon thousands. But Pastor Scott, what does it mean? And what does that mean when we think about an angel with a sword? Is it an actual sword, an Excalibur coming out, or what does it mean?
Well, it's interesting because, when it connects an angel with a sword, it's always angels that are visible on earth. From studying angels in the Bible, what we see is when angels appear on earth, they usually appear as men. And that would be, a connection there that an angel is materializing. We do know this. We know, first of all, let's start there, that angels are spirit beings. And we know that they are spiritual beings, and spiritual beings you can't see. So we don't see the angels that are around us because they're spirit beings and they can't be seen. But God does. He did in the Bible. There's times, and actually the book of Hebrews, the writer tells us that some people even entertain angels without even knowing it. They interact with angels without even knowing it. And the Bible does tell us that God allows angels sometimes to materialize, to be seen. But in the Bible, most of the time when you see them materialize, they appear as men, as human men. So that's one thing. What's interesting is the whole idea about them having swords simply speaks of their power, I think. Now, when you do look at different scriptures, and again, we're talking about angels materializing here. The only way, an angel could hold a sword in his hand is, again, if he materialized, if he had a physical body, and appeared in that form of a man and had a sword in his hand. And that's what's interesting is we do see that. Genesis 3:24 tells us that, when Adam and Eve were driven out of the garden, that God put there at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim that had a flaming sword. And are we looking there at actual cherubim that are materialized with swords? It appears. But the angels basically are just, and those swords act as a roadblock so that Adam and Eve, in their fallen sinful condition, don't go back to the tree of life and eat from this tree of life and live forever in a sinful, fallen state. It was actually an act of mercy on God's part by putting those angels there. But there are other instances, right? Numbers 22, where Balaam is riding his donkey, and all of a sudden the donkey sees an angel of the Lord. So obviously, he could see it there. Now, Balaam was clueless to the whole thing, but the donkey could see, and it talks about how the angel of the Lord was standing in the way and had his sword drawn in his hand, and that's why the donkey turned away. And then when Balaam's eyes were opened, he saw the angel standing there with a sword in his hand. And, it's interesting because the angel gives the inference there that, if you kept going, I'd killed you, so, and there's different instances. There are those instances where the Bible tells us about angels appearing and they have swords in their hands. And, in some instances, they're doing battle. They're doing physical battle with people and such. So I think we do have a construct and a foundation for that in the Bible. But to say that all angels have swords, I would say no. Just the way God only lets them materialize so people can see them for a certain purpose. I think the angels only have a sword for a certain purpose, and that's the purpose that God has sent them for, what God has sent them to do with that sword here on earth, if that makes sense. So, John, I'm excited to hear what you had to share about this.
Hey, I agree with you. The Bible says it, and I think what's going to be amazing, Juan, is when we get to heaven and we see these angels, and you know what, that is a sword. That is definitely exactly what they described it as, and how you use it. We're going to be amazed. There's going to be a lot of amazing things that we're going to find out in heaven. You know, the Bible does say that we know in part. There's certain things that we know and certain things we speculate about, and yet there's other things that we know concretely. But that's great references that you made there. And Juan, I hope that helps you.